All right. Well, today's an exciting day as we are actually doing our episode number 1. And it's going to be for our Haute lawyers. And it's going to be with an amazing lawyer and someone that's very well known in Miami. So I'm very excited to be having Michael Kosnitzky as our first webinar for Chat with Top Attorneys hosted by Haute Lawyer. So Michael, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
And where are you today, Michael?
I'm in our home in Aspen, Colorado. Just finished the Jewish New Year, and we have food and wine this weekend, so I'm very excited about that, going with my wife, Suzanne. We are babysitting our grand dog, Otto, here. Our son just started law school, so we took Otto in for the first semester here, so our son Zach could focus on his law school studies.
Oh,
so
very
we're enjoying
cool.
ourselves, enjoying some cool weather, nice cool weather here in Aspen.
Well, before we get into it, I want to give a quick bio. So let me read your bio, if that's okay. All right, Michael?
Okay.
Michael Kosnitzky, co-leader of Pillsbury Winthrop's private wealth practice, advises some of the world's most well-respected individuals, families, and private held businesses using a holistic risk assessment approach to the law. Michael has been recognized as a trust and estates trailblazer by the National Law Journal for his focus on where IRS policy is going and not necessarily where it stands today. His tax minimizing strategy guides financial and strategic buyers in complex taxable and tax-free mergers and acquisitions, privately held businesses in estate tax efficient succession planning, private investment funds in their choice of jurisdictions and structures, wealthy families and generational real estate income tax and estate planning, individuals and family offices regarding artwork and collectibles, and ultra high net worth individuals in the US and foreign trust matters. Michael is also a certified public accountant and is a prolific writer on diverse tax topics. Professional highlights: co-author of 2 treatises on S corporations, the S Corporation Planning and Operation and the S Corporation Answer Book, both Walters Kluwer publications. Michael's also part of the Law Dragon, the highly respected guide that lists the top 500 lawyers in the country, regardless of the practice areas, along with as recognized as one of the nation's most respected and creative tax lawyers by Chambers USA, Chambers High Net Worth, the Legal 500 US, and Best Lawyers. So Michael, first of all, Happy New Year to you and your family. Thank you for taking the time. So to start it out, Michael, where did you grow up?
I grew up partially in New York in the Long Island area, Brooklyn, and then Long Island. My dad was a deputy warden at Rikers Island Prison, and then moved the family to Miami in 1974. And I went to high school there at North Miami Beach Senior High, and graduated from there. So yeah, I grew up really in partially in New York, but my high school years were really in the Miami area.
And when you grew up in Miami, where did you go to college? Where did you end up going to college?
Well, I had a very sordid academic career. I thought I was going to be a general, and I went to West Point, United States Military Academy. I, along with a number of other people like Edgar Allan Poe and others, were West Point dropouts. Interestingly, my wife's father was a West Point graduate, but I was a West Point dropout, and I dropped out for a while and did some odd jobs around Miami. I was worked everything from construction to after-school programs at the JCC, and did a variety of things. And then I reached a point in time where my parents, being the good Jewish parents they were, kind of pushed me to go back to school. And I did. I took on an accounting major and did pretty well. I went to college at night at the University of Miami and graduated with an accounting degree, and was working during the day as a bookkeeper at back then it was called Ernst & Ernst, and it became Ernst & Winnie. Then now it's of course Ernst & Young. I was a bookkeeper, and then when I graduated and passed the CPA exam, I became a full-fledged accountant CPA at Ernst for several years.
I mean, you're humble about it, but obviously the West Point's one of the best schools in the country, so you must have had very high grades.
I had good grades and tested very well, but I was also a high school wrestler and an athlete, and it fit well with me. But I was homesick and just wasn't for me at that stage of my life. Made a mistake, but you rebound from those mistakes. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I remember my high school classmates, many of them were a year ahead of me because I really dropped out for a year and got started a little bit later in the process. But it worked out, and going to college at night. I went to law school at night too. That's the second part of my academic background. But went to college primarily at night and got my accounting degree, and it worked out just fine.
I mean, I think it's pretty remarkable that when you were going to college, you working, full time during the day and taking night classes. So you did that, and then you were taking night classes. Then after that, what made you decide to get into law?
Well, I got involved with tax law through the accounting profession, and I thought it might be an interesting thing to do. And so I asked permission at Ernst whether I could go to law school at night at the University of Miami. They used to have a night program. They did away with it. When my son just started, I inquired about the night program, and they told me they had ended it a number of years ago. But for the night program,
did you check on it, or did your son tell you that? Because maybe your son doesn't want to work during the day, and he just said there's no night school.
No, I was a good father. I went with him to orientation. I raised my hand and asked that question, what about the night program? And they said it doesn't exist anymore many years ago. But I probably wouldn't have gone because I didn't have the resources to, and I had to work. And so I was fortunate. And I was also fortunate, and kudos to Ernst, they let me do that because obviously it cuts into your workday. And I used to take off for my final exams 2 weeks, and I grow a beard. And that was my first beard during like that study period. I'd take my vacation to study for exams. And funny story about that, just a little side story about that. So I used to take off and grow a beard, and it became my ritual, and people would know, and they were very supportive of me going to law school. And I would come back and I'd shave my beard. And this was during the 80s. If you remember, the Iranian hostage crisis was this
Yes.
cycle. And so one time I took the final exams, and then I came back and I didn't shave my beard off. And the managing partner of the firm, his name was Harold Walker, I'll never forget. He came in, he's very polite to me, he's very respectful of me, and very respectful of what I was trying to accomplish. And he walked into my office. I didn't have a windowed office, I shared an office. And he said, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, oh, yes, sir. And the person who was sharing the office, he asked to leave. And I came in, I thought I was going to get fired. And he said, Michael, we have a policy here at Ernst, back then Ernst & Ernst, we don't permit beards. I said, well, sir, I grew a beard to protest the taking of our hostages in Iran, and which was, of course, a lie. It was a joke, and he wasn't sure whether it was a joke or not. I said, I'm not going to shave it off until until the hostages are released. And so, of course, this went on for a while, and then ultimately, as you know, Carter was the president, and Reagan was elected, and the hostages were released just about the time I think he was being sworn in. And so Harold Walker came into my office again, and I still had the beard. I was the only one that had a beard. He says, well, the hostages have been released. You can shave your beard off. I said, oh, no, sir, not until all claims are settled.
So you went to law school, and then after law school, how long did it take you to finish law school while you were working at Ernst?
Well, the last semester, I became a day student to wrap up, so I graduated on time. I graduated first in my class, blessedly, and was hired by a Wall Street firm called Davis Polk and Wardwell. And so I was the first University of Miami graduate that Davis Polk ever hired, and I came in to work for them in the tax area.
So that must have been exciting, obviously, to get, to go from bookkeeping to becoming a lawyer. And, so it must have been an exciting time of your life.
It was a very exciting time. It was the go-go days of the 80s. I worked for a wonderful lady named Lydia Cass. She's still alive. I know she's still alive because I just became a member of the Colorado Bar, and they apparently reached out to her when they did my background check. I just became 2 days ago a member of the Colorado Bar, and they had to do a background check, and they check your whole, both academic and work history, and
oh, wow.
And also where you live. and they actually reached out to her in Tel Aviv and tracked her down. Apparently, she said nice things about me. I worked for her. She was an Orthodox Jewish lady. She was the first woman I don't know if the first woman partner at Davis Polk, but she certainly was one of the very few. And she headed up the tax group, and I was kind of her, I was a protege, and it was a very good experience while I was there.
And so, and you were interested in taxes. You just loved that part of the whole arena of law?
Well, I mean, I felt like I had some strength because of my CPA background, and I really got turned on to tax because when you really understand tax, it's it's highly technical. It's very evolving. It's very changing. It's a very dynamic area of the law. And there are very few people that really master it. There are a lot of people who do it, but not many people that master it. And so I feel like that it gives me some, differentiates me among my colleagues in terms of this particular practice area, and then what I do for the ultra wealthy in the practice area. Great story with Lydia Kess, by the way. So she was an Orthodox Jewish lady, lived in Brooklyn before Brooklyn was trendy. And she had me at her office on a Friday. I remember it was a snowy Friday evening. I was on a call, a conference call with T. Boone Pickens, who passed away a short time ago. And he was describing a transaction. I was taking copious notes, and I had research follow up, and she was describing the transaction. She had a photographic memory. She has a photograph. She's just a brilliant lady. But he respected her so much. He was this Oklahoma gentleman from Oklahoma, billionaire, arbitrageur, that respected her so much and wanted her views so much that it came about 4:30, I remember, and he said, in his Oklahoma accent, his kind of drawl, Western drawl, he said, "Oh, Lydia, it's almost Shabbos." And she said, she looked at her, she's a very unassuming lady. She looked at the clock on the wall and said, "Yes, T," she called him T. "Yes, T, I have to go. I'll call you on Sunday morning." And in the middle of the transaction, as describing the trade, she got up and left the room.
And this is,
I
know who this guy's an icon. He's a real confirmed, he's one of the most successful entrepreneurs probably in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And that must be exciting.
That's how much he needed her, and wanted her to work on his projects,
And that must be exciting to be able to work with people at that level and be, you're an important part of their business, because at the end of the day, it's very complex, it's big money, and they're coming to you for real advice. So tell us a little about dealing with some of these people, because obviously you're dealing with some of the most highly sophisticated, successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah, thank you. Some are different. They're different people. They're legacy wealth. People have family money. Some are self-made at different levels. Some family businesses that they've evolved into very successful businesses, and some are new wealth. They're all over the place. My wealth is, the clients are all over the place. They're domestic. They're foreign. They all have different qualities and characteristics. But my job is to protect them and to assess risk. I think you mentioned in my bio, the elongated bio, that it's a mouthful, but on it talk about risk. It really comes down to risk. What you're trying to do is protect the wealthy. Tax is but one risk. The state tax, income tax is but one risk. There's reputational risks. There's all kinds of risks. That there's litigation risk, there's divorce risk, there's all kinds of risks, and so my job is to assess risk, is to first identify it, and then to be able to try to assess it and mitigate it, and that's what I do for a living. And so it's not although I'm a tax lawyer by training, what I do in heading up the private wealth group is to be much broader than that. Our practice, I say half jokingly, it's the rich and the spoiled. The problems of the rich and the spoiled. They have to be very rich and sometimes spoiled. Not all my clients are spoiled. Many of them are. They have a right to be. And I spoil them by making myself available 24/7 to them, as does everyone who works with me in my practice area. Because, they're demanding people, and they pay for our services, and they deserve to get them, and they deserve to get the best quality. So they're very demanding. They have a right to be. That doesn't make them, not cordial. They are cordial, many of them. But we're being evaluated every day. We have to earn our stripes every day, and we can't rest on our laurels. Many of our clients are clients that we've obtained from other people who did rest on their laurels, who weren't, Johnny on the spot in terms of seeing opportunities. And those opportunities come up different ways. There are changes in the law, but also you have to be attuned to your client's changes in facts. And you can't do that from afar. You have to do it by having, an ongoing kind of connectivity with them to understand what changes in their life. And you also have to understand their risk quotient. Some clients are less risk averse. Some clients are more. And when you understand a client's goals and risk, what I call risk quotient, then you could advise them properly in all aspects of their life, not just tax. We don't let the tax tail wag the business dog or the other aspects of their life. We try to take everything in their lives and deal with it holistically, and with a focus on risk mitigation, because that's what you need to do with the wealthy.
And so you worked with the beautiful Jewish lady in New York, and then what was next after that? Tell us a little about how your career evolved.
I worked with one of my mentors after that was a gentleman named Byron Sparber. He had a firm in Miami called Sparber Shevin. It was a very large firm. It rivaled Greenberg Traurig at the time. They were the two kind of large up-and-coming firms. But I was not a partner there. I was an associate, like a senior associate. And it failed during the RTC days. It went out of business. It was one of those casualties of the RTC for a variety of reasons. But I wasn't a partner at the time. I was an associate, and I had a choice. I could go with one of the other partners to another firm. This was back in the 80s, or I could have started my own firm. And so, in effect, I started my own firm, and it had different iterations. But ultimately, it was called Zach Kosnitzky. Steve Zach was former Florida bar president, and he became ABA president. And he and I ultimately created this firm. There were other iterations of it over the years, but it ultimately was Zach Kosnitzky. We had a Fort Lauderdale and Miami practice. And then along came Bush v. Gore, and we became Florida counsel to Al Gore. And while we were pretty successful at the Florida level, you may recall that Boyce Schiller, David Boyes, represented the famous, probably the greatest trial lawyer of our generation, represented Al Gore at the U.S. Supreme Court and lost that case. A lot of people don't think that's true constitutional law, but it is what it is. It is the law of the land. And George Bush became president. But as a result of that, David Boyes made us an offer we couldn't refuse, and we became the Miami and Fort Lauderdale offices of Boyce Schiller. And I was a partner there for 15 years, heading up the tax and middle market practice group.
Oh, wow. For David Boyes?
Yeah. Yeah, right. So I was a partner at Boyce Schiller, an equity partner at Boyce Schiller. And it was a great relationship for a number of years. But I reached a point where I felt that for myself and the people I work with and practice with, it wasn't the best environment to be in to grow what we wanted to grow. It was primarily a litigation firm, and they didn't have a kind of the interest to build either Miami, frankly, or my practice area, the private wealth, private client, family office practice area that I wanted. And after some conversations, we had a nice amicable splitting of the ways, and I became a partner at Pillsbury Winthrop and brought a number of our people with us and opened the Miami office for Pillsbury. That's been quite successful. So I practice both in New York and Miami, sometimes at our home here in Aspen now.
And now you're doing Colorado, because you said you just got, congratulations.
Sorry?
I said now Colorado too. You just said you just got the license or
Yes, I just became licensed here, yes. I didn't have to take the exam because of my years of practice and because I was a member of the New York and District of Columbia bars. So I'm now Florida, D.C., and New York, and now Colorado. So maybe we'll be doing some more here. But I mostly practice. I have an office in New York City on our office on 52nd and between 5th and 6th. I have an apartment in New York on 50th between 8th and 9th that the firm has for me. Others have access to it, but I use it. And it's my when I'm in town. And I also I live on South Beach with my wife, and our son is in law school, as I said. So that's been the history. So now I'm at Pillsbury, have been for almost 5 years, and have built out this practice, I think, very successfully during that period of time and integrated, I think, pretty well.
Well, let's rewind here because I think what's important is of the interview and learning through you is you've made choices, and some choices, haven't been the best, like from going to college and, doing your own practice, and you're always evolving your brand and doing things. As a lawyer, what advice would you give to somebody coming out of law school? Because obviously you tried different ways where you had your own practice. And then David Boies, which is, as you said, probably one of the best litigators there is in the country, but is not, a full tax accountant lawyer based in Miami. So then you needed to go back to another company that maybe could help build your business. Tell us a little about advice or what you learned throughout the whole process.
Well, I think there's a couple of things I would advise younger people, I advise lawyers in general, is that you have to be versatile. You have to be flexible. I think I'm the anti-technocrat. There was a book written in the 60s called The Making of the Counterculture by Theodore Roosevelt. And he talks about everybody's going to become a little technocrat, super specialized. And lawyers have adapted that philosophy. That's why they charge high rates for their subspecialties. Everybody's a little technocrat, a little subspecialist. I'm the anti-technocrat. I believe lawyers have to be flexible and have to have a broad-based view of of clients' needs. When a client comes to you, they have a problem. They don't have a tax problem or an estate problem or a problem about buying a specific type of asset, whether it be a yacht or an aircraft or artwork, whatever it is. They have a holistic issue about how to deal with their situation, and you have to be able to answer that in multidisciplinary ways. And so that doesn't mean you have to be an expert in all areas, but you have to be conversant in them. So one of the things I say to young lawyers, I say to all lawyers, is that you shouldn't get pigeonholed. I try not to be. And I think it's very important to be multidisciplinary, even though you have a specific area of expertise, maybe extra expertise. The other thing is, I think, being well-read. I read a bunch of papers every day. I read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Miami Herald. I read the New York Post every day. A lot of people don't believe that, but I do every day. Page 6.
No, I read the Post. If you're a New Yorker, you always got to read the Post. Yes, I read.
I can't. You don't know what's going on in New York unless you read the New York Post. But also, if my client is in Page 6, and they often are, my clients are there quite a bit, so I need to read about them and know about it before then. I read the Daily Business Review. So I read that. Then I have to read I do a lot of reading. I think being well-read, I want to know what clients are reading and what they're thinking about. And you have to have a good sense of trends. I wrote an article during the pandemic that was in Financial Advisor magazine called The Cusp of Change. I talk about how the wealthy are going to be affected by change in administration. Many things I said in that article turned out to be true. They're prescient in terms of what's evolved. Some of it have not come true yet. It may not at all. But understanding what changes will occur, not just tax law changes, but changes in general. The wealthy have become targets, and I cited that earlier, and they become more so. They've been demonized. The billionaires of the world become demonized, I think wrongfully. I wrote an article about the Chan Zuckerberg initiative. I wrote several articles, one technical one less one, and I think the one less technical was called No Good Deed Goes Unpunished, because they want to give their money away, but they're criticized for giving their money away. And so, or people wanting to serve on tax-exempt boards and digging up things from either their background or their family's background from generations ago that have tainted them and forced them to resign from charitable boards. I think that's despicable, but that's just the fact of life. And so the wealthy have become a target. Security issues for the wealthy. This has nothing to do with tax. It's risk. How do you assess somebody's risk? Not just risk of violence, but risk of property damage, and also personal violence, but also property damage. There's criminalizations of behaviors that didn't exist before. These all affect the wealthy more so than anyone else. Criminalization doesn't mean going to jail necessarily, but it means being aware that your behaviors are going to be more scrutinized if you're ultra wealthy. We saw, people had offshore bank accounts. It was never legal to have them, by the way, but they weren't scrutinized, and the government didn't come after people that had them. And if they did catch them, they slapped them on the wrist. Now they put them in jail, or they severely fined them, and they found banks that hid those assets. So there was a cusp of changes. Seeing those changes, seeing where both the opportunities and risks are going to occur, and alerting to clients. I focus more on the risk, frankly. I look at the opportunities, but I also focus primarily on the risk. What are the risks to the wealthy? How are their behaviors going to be criminalized in some way? Again, criminalized doesn't mean necessarily putting them in jail. It may mean throwing them off the boards, civil fines, tax scrutinization in ways that didn't exist before, licensure, environmental, and lots of other things.
So basically, that's an interesting point, because obviously we've had a new admin change from one administration to another, where one administration was a little bit less aggressive on the rich. And now, I mean, every day you're hearing a new thing, 1.5 trillion, now 3 trillion. And every day, I mean, today I was watching CNBC and they said, hey, we have an idea. Let's go after hedge funds and derivatives and start taxing the derivatives. Do you think like now, more than ever, it's almost like, you know, because you deal with like even Pickens, these are entrepreneurs that are very successful, that build businesses, amassed a huge amount of wealth, but now it's like, you know, someone's got to pay all these bills, and, you know, it's a lot easier to go after the rich than to go to the poor. Do you feel like now more than ever, your expertise is like very important to protect your clients? Because what you said is it's not about the reward, but more the risk, protecting the clients.
Yeah, and it's a very good point. So first of all, let me just make a point. The things that are being proposed, and not just by President Biden, but also by others in Congress, particularly on the Democratic side of the aisle, are pretty extraordinary. There have been wealth taxes proposed, market-to-market taxation proposed, things that really dynamically change how we view taxation now and how we view transfers of wealth. That includes taxation or loss of step-up in basis at death, things that we've just taken for granted for generations. So that one point I want to make is that these changes, some of them that are being proposed, are really pretty drastic. They're not, you know, rate increases. So one point. Another point I want to make is that most of my clients started preparing for this during the primaries. I mean, you know, last year when these things were just being proposed. So most of my clients have done, I mean, all of my clients have done all of the basic planning to deal with this stuff. They're not dealing with it now. They've made decisions about what they were going to do with their wealth a long time ago in anticipation of this. And if it didn't occur, it might occur. And those sort of risks are so devastating that you need to prepare for them well in advance, not on the cusp of or the eve of these things. And then, you know, look, you know, we don't know how all this will shake out. And so keeping your flexibility is very, very important, and not get, you know, pigeonholed into any particular strategy. But one basic principle is that the government trying to raise taxes, either getting rid of capital gain arbitrage or increasing ordinary income tax rates, or increasing the Social Security base, or whatever they're going to do, is really not the solution to anybody's problem. It doesn't really affect the wealthy, and not going to raise revenue. Because really wealthy, ultra wealthy people in my clients don't create transactions that create gain and tax. They borrow, they create derivative type of transactions. They create transactions in vehicles that are not taxed. So that's what I spend my time doing. I don't focus so much on rate increases as I do on the bigger picture of how to avoid taxation in the first place, any type of taxation. Now, you know, tax is what we pay for a civilized society, and we're going to have to pay. Everybody has to pay their share. You saw a few weeks ago that there was a leak. We still don't know how it leaked, but we know why it leaked, about the wealthiest people in the country and how they pay very little tax. That's because they don't have taxation because they're not creating taxable events. When you borrow,
Michael, I want to interrupt you because they always say that, and it kind of upsets me, because even like, you know, they talked about, I don't want to go too much into it, but they talked about Donald Trump, how he doesn't pay taxes, or they talk about Amazon as they don't talk taxes. But what about like all the payroll taxes and all the business, all the amount of money that they're contributing to society, like all the real estate that Amazon holds and the property taxes that they're paying. Don't you think that's misleading to the customer? Because like you just go and read, oh, Jeffrey Bezos, like I see Elizabeth Warren, who probably is your arch enemy, but she's always on CNBC saying Jeffrey Bezos pays zero in taxes. But I mean, he's one of the largest employers in the country, and I gotta believe what he contributes is beyond a huge amount. And what's your answer to that? Because you said it, and in our business, we always work with the highly successful rich people, and it's like they're the number one enemy now, because they got the money. It's like everyone's mindset is, how can we get that money from them?
Yeah, so it's funny because one of my dad was, I told you, he was a deputy warden at Rikers, and he had Willie Sutton, and he was there. The famous quote, why do you rob banks? They asked Willie Sutton. He said, because that's where the money is. Well, the wealthy where the money is. However, it is misleading. And you're absolutely correct. By the way, I don't consider Elizabeth Warren an arch enemy. I get where she's coming from. I don't agree, but I understand everybody's point of view. And there are grand compromises that can be reached on all of these issues. So I want to just make that point. But going back to this, it's true that all of this is not calculated, but who expects it to be? The ultra wealthy is where the money is. Now, I think there was a report that came out the other day, the percentage of people that pay no tax, I think it's approached 61%. You can correct me if I'm wrong. It just came out the other day.
No, it's about 60%.
Pay no tax.
You're right.
Yeah, something like 60% now that pay no tax. So I always feel philosophically, everybody should have some skin in the game. You can't appreciate tax increases if you pay no tax. You can't understand it, right? It's just something that somebody else does. It's somebody else has to pay for the bills. So I think, as I say, the wealthy are demonized. Also, the other one you didn't mention that I always love is when they say that my secretary pays a higher rate of tax than the billionaire does. That's silly because they're looking at marginal tax rates. Most of the ultra wealthy pay tax at a 23.8% rate, which is 20% capital gain rate or qualified dividend rate, plus a 3.8% Medicare tax. And so they look at that and they say, well, yes, the secretary pays ordinary income tax and pays Social Security tax at a higher marginal rate than the billionaire does, but he's paying much more in tax. He or she is paying much more in tax and pays other taxes, as you correctly point out. So again, it's politics. A lot of it is politics. Another point is that some of these changes, I started to mention earlier, some of these changes that are being proposed, depending on how extreme they are, can't be paid for by taxing the wealthy. If you taxed every penny, if you had 100% tax, you wouldn't be able to pay for them. These are trillions of dollars. That means there will be trickle down. And so, the expression for, someday they're going to come for me. They are going to come for you. They have to. They cannot do what they're proposing to do, to just tax billionaires. This is the fallacy. And so whatever's being done now, depending upon the politics that exist and how who controls which parts of government, this will have to evolve if this kind of spending occurs to ding people at the wealthy, not just the ultra wealthy, but the wealthy, and then the moderately wealthy, and then, yes, ultimately the middle class. It cannot, because there's more of them. And so you're going to have to move in that direction. Otherwise, you won't be able to pay for all this stuff, all this free stuff.
And so, Michael, where do you see your business in 5 to 10 years from now? Obviously, you've had an amazing career, but it seems like you're still in like inning 3 of a 9-inning ball game. So, where do you see you taking your business?
Well, I continue to view myself as the chief defender, the Secretary of Defense of the wealthy. I've written lots on this. Like I said, the most recent one was customer change, but the wealthy do not, as you correctly point out, the largest philanthropy comes from the wealthy. The desire to give back, this does not have to be government controlled. There's a big belief that the wealthy, when they give their money away, either during life or at death, and many of my clients have made the pledge to give away most or all of their wealth, at the end of this generational wealth, so it doesn't pass on to their families, or a small amount does. Many of them have made that pledge. So demonizing the ultra wealthy is wrongheaded, and I continue to defend them. I continue to come up with strategies so that the wealthy do pay their fair share, but their fair legal share that they're required to pay by law. That doesn't mean being overly aggressive. Many of my clients are more concerned about their reputations than they are about how much tax they pay. But it does mean to understand the law in a way that maybe you have disagreements with the IRS or state officials. I do all the time. When two partners in business always agree, one of them is irrelevant. So there are going to be disagreements, and I have them very frequently with taxing authorities. Fortunately, I win more of them than I lose, but I don't win them all. But that doesn't mean that the government is always right about either the general proposition that wealthy don't pay their fair share, or as to any particular tax issue. So I view myself over the next 5 years, continue doing what I'm doing right now, being the chief defender of the ultra wealthy, and also looking for further opportunities to protect them, to mitigate their risk, and to allow them to live happy, successful lives and to benefit society as they have done in the past.
And to finish it off, because I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's a remarkable story, because I've known you socially, but I've never really known how advanced your expertise is. So what you've done is in my opinion amazing, because you've kind of pinpointed an area and become an expert in that. And that's really my last question, is because you talked about at the beginning, what in your opinion makes you one of the best in your field, as you said, protecting the ultra wealthy?
I think I listen. I think that's the primary thing. I listen to what a client wants. I listen to what they say. And then, in what I do, when you sell shoes, the customer's always right. When you deal in what I deal in and other lawyers, the customer's usually wrong. Client is usually wrong. They don't know really what they need. But when you listen to what their objectives are, when you listen to their concerns, when you listen to, and to think that just because someone's ultra wealthy, they live a carefree life, that's not true. These burdens are, the burdens that the average folk feel, they say the rich are different, F. Scott Fitzgerald paraphrasing it. They are, okay? They are. But they still have stresses, and they still have concerns and risks and lots of other things that everybody else has. So I listen to them, and I listen really carefully about what they have and what they have and what they need, what they think they need, and their objectives, both their objectives for themselves, for their families, and for the world, and for society. And then I try to make suggestions to them based upon how I think they think and how I think they would like to have those wishes and objectives progress. And that's what I try to do. So I listen very carefully. I also try to respectfully make suggestions. Some people come, they pre-diagnose, just like going to a doctor and saying, I know what I need. Well, usually they don't know what they need. But I listen to them, and I can explain to them what they're suggesting may be an alternative, but there are 3 or 4 other alternatives. And I also have a philosophy with my clients, even the ultra wealthy, a 95% solution that's less expensive, less complicated, less intricate, less likely to footfalls is better than a 100% solution that might have all of those attributes. So you have to balance. This is a judgment. This is not just knowing what the law is. It's knowing where the law is going, kind of paraphrasing Wayne Gretzky, knowing where the puck is going. I get paid to know where the puck is going. So I have a sense of where the puck is going, where the law is going, and understanding their risks and objectives. And I try to blend all those things. And so that's what I try to do.
And so, Michael, the last question, your son, you said, is starting law school. What type of law does he want to get into? Does he want to get into the same category, or is he looking maybe to represent drug dealers or to represent corporations? What is he looking to do?
Well, everybody deserves a lawyer, whether you're a corporation or a drug dealer.
100%.
Everybody deserves to have a good lawyer representing him. So I don't know what he's going to do. I try to talk him out of practicing law. I said it's too hard. It's too stressful. And I tried to suggest to do something else. I don't know where he's going to end up, but he is a natural born speaker. And, I've only been in courtroom twice in my life, both my own traffic tickets. And I want to tell you the result of those cases. But my son, I have a feeling, is going to be the litigator in the family.
So he might even go, he would be a perfect fit in the boys category then, working in like.
Well,
one of the-
I would be honored if either that firm considered him as a potential associate someday. I would certainly be honored. I know he would be too.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you because this is our first episode. But I think what's remarkable is that you've made choices, but you always continue to grow. And I think that's a very important lesson to learn out of your success for someone watching this. Like, some people would go to Naval Academy and, they would fail and quit in life or something, but, you didn't quit in life. You pivoted. You then went into accounting. You liked it, but then you found another area, and that area you stuck with for a long time, and you built an amazing, successful career. And thank you so much for taking the time and sharing it with us. But your story, in my opinion, is remarkable, and congratulations. And I really appreciate you being part of Haute Living, because you're obviously one of the best in what you do.
Well, you're very kind, and I enjoy our partnership, and enjoy reading your publications online or in print. And obviously, my clients read them because they talk about it. So
That's amazing.
let's continue let's continue the success.
Well, when you come back to Miami, I look forward to seeing you and having a social time at some of our events. So thank you again, Michael, and enjoy the new year with your family.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.